We are here in the library.
We only have two pieces of music.
Yeah, and they're very bad additions. And we are here to tell you why they are very bad additions. Hello and welcome. I'm Diana, Orchestra Librarian for Symphony Nova Scotia, and this is my underling, James. In the library, we prepare and acquire all the music that you hear our musicians play throughout the season. Here today on this Prelude to Bach Friends, we're here to take you into the shadows behind the symphony and show you how a Baroque program comes together.
Baroque music is some of our absolute favorite music to listen to and perform, not only because it's weird and it's old, but also because it's exciting to improvise. There's so much artistic expression that you can do with it, and it's just really unique and interesting music that really delves into the brains of these really interesting composers. It also makes it incredibly difficult for us as librarians to prepare. So let's talk about it.
When we're selecting sheet music for performance, we try and pick something that's as close to the composer's original intentions as possible, as far as we can judge that. Of course, the older the music gets, the trickier this becomes. So for Bach, for example, you might want something that was written by Bach or in Bach's time. But if you go all the way back to that time period, then you end up with music that looks something like this. These parts are for the Telemann double violin concerto, which you will be hearing in our concert. And they were written out by J.S. Bach and Pisendel themselves, also on our concert, who probably performed it together as soloists in Weimar in 1714. This is as authentically Baroque as it gets. We'll just hand these out to our musicians and we're all set to go. We can go home. Our job here is done.
Yeah, nothing could go wrong, right? With something like this, we can totally read it.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
It's great.
Just kidding, that would be terrible. As you can see, it's exceptionally difficult to read. Not only was it handwritten, but it was also handwritten by somebody who died about 300 years ago. So there's a lot that needs to be taken into consideration with something like this. So what do we do instead? It would make sense to just pick the oldest existing printed edition of the music, right? Right? Right?
You would think that.
Wrong.
Wrong. So here's the thing with Baroque music. All the exciting, improvisatory, unique things that you hear in the music is because a lot of it isn't written down. Take a look at this manuscript score for Pachelbel's Canon in G, which you will be hearing on this concert.
So for anyone who's familiar with how sheet music works, you'll notice that there's not a whole lot there. There's no articulation, there's no tempo, there's no dynamics. The only thing that exists is just the notes, right? And so this gives the performer the opportunity to do what they do best, which is to express themselves musically. The thing that makes Baroque music so wonderful is that it's a tradition. It's not just a piece of music on a sheet of paper. It's a culture of music that we as performers are excited to get into. But the wonderful thing about it is, similarly to jazz, you as the performer understand cultural conventions about the music that don't necessarily find themselves written down on the paper. So like a lead sheet in jazz, there's just not a whole lot there. And so the result, if you were to play it exactly how it was written, like the 19th century convention would be, it wouldn't sound like a whole lot at all.
Yeah, but then when you go, so Baroque music became super trendy and popular again in the 19th century. And when that happened, all these publishers were like, well, there's nothing in this music.
There's nothing there.
How are we supposed to perform it?
What are we
So,
to do?
They took these scores that didn't have anything in them, and they're like, well, clearly this was forgotten, so I'll add it in myself. So if you take a look at the Pachelbel score here, that was edited by Max Siebert and was the only edition available for a very long time, you can see he's added sostenuto, he's added tempo markings, he's added all these slurs and dynamics and articulations that if you looked at them back in Pachelbel's time would probably not have been there.
So if we were to play this specific edition, we would be playing it Max's way.
Yes.
Curse you, Max Seifert. We don't want to play it your way. We're playing it our way. It just doesn't make any sense to do it the way that some guy who wasn't even the composer decided that it ought to be played.
And yet again, for a very long time, this was the only edition available. As you can see, the edition in our library is Max Siebert's edition. And when we performed it last, our concertmaster Renaud had to take a lot out in order to make it the version that he wanted it to be. So If manuscripts are too hard to read and old modern editions have too much non-Baroqueness in them, then what makes a good edition? Well, really what we want is the manuscript but easy to read. So a modern edition that takes that manuscript and puts it into modern notation so everyone can see it, but doesn't add anything else in so that the musicians or the leader of the orchestra, in our case, can decide how we are going to perform that. So take a look here at the same score for Pachelbel, but this is an edition that we are using and that our leader, Julia Wedman, has marked for us. As you can see, there's a lot less than our friend Max put in. She's played it a little bit faster than Max decided, and she has not added in any slurs. She has not added in sostenuto, and she's mostly left it to the players because Pachelbel's canon is a solo piece, so the soloists should be allowed to add what they choose into the music.
So based on these markings, you can see that it creates a collaborative process between the musicians and the leader. And like you said, it's a solo piece, which means that each part is played by one person, which means that they get to put their distinct flair and their own understanding of the music on each of these different sections, which wouldn't have been as possible with an edition that was already marked by somebody like our friend Max Seifert. So Julia's markings are a collaborative process and they change during the rehearsal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like the score that we get back at the end is always a little bit different than the score that we gave out. Or
very different, as the case
might be. Extremely different sometimes. So sometimes we'll find things in the score that are, completely not musical markings at all. So like we've had, imagine a bright sunny day or a little heart.
Clear blue skies over a Saskatchewan prairie.
Yeah, and it gives the musicians an idea of how they're supposed to sound or an idea of what they might want to sound like, without actually giving these hard instructions like in the 19th century edition.
Yeah, the room for improv while still having a cohesive sound for the orchestra.
So like jazz, it's a lead sheet. It's a set of loose guidelines and instructions for how this ought to be performed, and then once it is handed out to the musicians, it floats away.
And much like jazz, there are some conventions that people might have known in this Baroque period, but now Julia helps translate for our musicians when we play them. So as an example, take a look at this score for the Bach Orchestral Suite. You'll notice that it's marked as an overture. In this case, that refers to a French overture, which is a very popular style from the Baroque period that was obviously popularized in France, but spread quickly across all of Western Europe, and everyone was playing it. So it has a very specific style. It's always slow, fast, slow. And you, much like jazz, you actually swing the notes sometimes. They call it inégal, and basically you don't play it even, you swing it a little bit. And people would know that because they would see this style of music. So even though Bach is obviously not French, because he wrote this overture, people would play it like a French overture style.
And because the culture of the music is the thing that's the most important. And the conventions that are known between musicians rather than just between publisher and composer. I think that's the thing that makes Baroque music the most exciting.
Exactly. And like other conventions, like you can see in this Bach suite that there are oboes in it. But you might notice in the corner there that Julia has added bassoon too. The bassoon doesn't have their own part. They play in what's called the continuo section. So they play along with the cello and the basses and the harpsichord. But we know to add them because the oboes are also there.
So once we have the markings from Julia, we then copy them into each of the individual parts rather than just on the score so that they can each read their own part. Like we said, we make it as easy as possible to read the music. We copy each of the individual markings over to the parts, and then once the parts are prepared, we put them in the folder and we send them on their way.
And then it's their problem.
And then it's their problem. Woohoo, we did it. So good luck. So thanks for joining us in the library today. We hope we'll see you at Bach Friends. Bye.